Thank you. Senator Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Deputy President. I stand today in support of the wharfies at Hutchison's Port, Australia. I stand in support of the wives, the husbands and the children who have got an uncertain future because of the actions of this multinational corporation. I stand here today to condemn the actions of Hutchison Ports Australia in terminating workers by fax and by text message and email. This is a massive multinational company, one of the biggest or the biggest port operator in the world. A company that should know better. A company that simply treated its workers with no respect, no dignity, and certainly did not give them a fair go. It's unusual that we have Senate resolutions passed on industrial relations disputes. But there was 2 Senate resolutions passed yesterday. One moved by myself and Senator Rhiannon, calling on the company to return to pre-dispute situation, get everyone back on the job and sit round and talk about the issues that are between the workers, the MUA and the company. We also had a resolution from Senator Lazarus expressing the view that the actions of Hutchison Ports Australia was not one that we welcome or consider acceptable behaviour in Australia. So this is generally seen in the community as an unacceptable, unprincipled way to deal with workers. Hutchison Port Australia, they sound as if they're Australian, but they're not. They are a subsidiary of a Hong Kong-based company, Hutchison Port Holdings. This is a company that made $11 billion Australian profit in 2014. The company is owned by Li Ka-shing, the 17th richest man in worth in the world, with an estimated personal net worth of $27 billion. HPH operates 319 berths in 50 ports in 26 countries. Forbes magazine listed Li Ka-shing as the 28th most powerful person in the world in 2014, ahead of Rupert Murdoch, IMF Director Christine Lagarde and UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon. Now, Hutchison Whampoa is one of the companies exposed as having a secret tax avoidance deal in Luxembourg. Hutchison's Ports Australia, one of the subsidiaries of Hutchison's, is managed out of Hong Kong. It's not managed in Australia, it's managed out of Hong Kong. The holding company is in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is seen as one of the top global players for tax avoidance by the Tax Justice Network. So they've got their holding company in the same place that James Hardie went to try and avoid its responsibilities in Australia. Now, this is a massive multinational corporation treating its workers with absolute contempt. And one of the workers I spoke to today was Lyra Diaz of Maroubra. She is amongst one of the Hutchison's workers who were sacked last week. She said she first learned of her sacking on Friday morning. She had the phone on silent, so she didn't get the text message to go and check her email. Now, she had started work with this company a year and a half ago. She lived in a Housing Commission house. She moved out of the Housing Commission house because she felt she had a job with a reputable company, a job that would last for many years, and she went into private rental accommodation in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, costing $610 a week. She's got 2 kids, she's a single mum, she's lost her Housing Commission house, she's lost her job in the most reprehensible manner, and she wonders what life holds for her. Well, I say to Hutchinson's, think about your workers, think about what you've done, and get back round the table with the MUA and their members and work this through. These Australian workers should not be treated this way by a multinational company. And it was concerning that we had Senator Erica Betts, the leader of the opposition in the Senate, defending the use of text messages to sack workers. We also had Senator Fierravanti-Wells saying yesterday that I was not listening to Senator Betts when he was speaking yesterday, that as Senator Betts had correctly indicated, she says, the use of text messaging at this workplace is not unusual, and it's in fact one of the expressly agreed modes of communication under the enterprise agreement. Well, let me tell you, there is no agreement that workers should be sacked by text message. It's only the industrial relations mob over in the coalition, the extremists, who think that that's a thing that should be done. Now, we all know the history of Senator Betts on industrial relations. We all know the history of Senator Betts and the coalition when it comes to the MUA. In fact, Senator Betts yesterday, when he refused to answer questions on this issue, said that the MUA had a disgraceful history of sabotaging our World War II effort and compromising the safety and security of Australian soldiers overseas. And then he spoke about a work by a Dr. Colbatch, an excellent piece of work. Well, that work has been analysed by many in the literary community, including Mike Carlton, who is an expert in war history in this country. And he calls it a right-wing rant against Australian trade unions, an ideological track that includes errors, hearsay, exaggeration, and in some cases, sheer fiction and fancy. He says, history it is not. And yet that's what this mob over here, the coalition, would rely on to try and attack the integrity of a union looking after its members. That's what this mob would do to try and denigrate Australian workers. They would rely on a fiction and they would rely on a lie. And if you read Mike Carlton's article, you will see that none of it that they argue against the MUA is true, and yet we have Senator Betts coming here trying to defend what is a fiction, what is a lie. But we know that this coalition are well acquainted with lies. You've only got to look what they do day in, day out, lying to the Australian public. Now I want to just, in closing, go to the struggles that this workers have had in the industry. You've only got to know the history of the Hungry Mile in Sydney, where workers were under what was called the bull run, the bull system. This is where they were pitted against each other for a job. And the bulls got the job. The biggest, strongest people got the job. The most compliant people got the job. And that's what it was all about. And that's what I think the coalition would like to see happen again on the wharves. You've only got to look at the history of the coalition and the conspiracy that they engaged in against the workers of Patrick's and the MUA, which came out in court, the real history in this country, the conspiracy that this government, this former Howard government, engaged in against Patrick's workers, using Finwest to train military personnel in Dubai to try and replace workers on the docks, engaging in attacks and character assassination of union officials and the union. We cannot trust this government on industrial relations. They should actually stand up and say what this company is doing, this Hong Kong-based multinational is doing to Australian workers is unacceptable. They should stand up for Australian workers. They should stop the ideological attack on the MUA. They should stop the lies. They should stand up for Australians and Australian jobs, and they should behave like a government looking after Australians. They are a reprehensible mob, the same as the company that sacked the workers.